We're going to be well, I say we, it's me, I'm going to be doing it, and you're going to be watching. Sugar lavender, which looks quite effective and is surprisingly simple, and you'll see in a minute how surprisingly simple it is. There's slightly different colours, I don't know if you can see that. There's slightly different colours because I've dusted two, and this one in the middle I haven't dusted yet. I thought I'd keep that one to show you how to dust. But there we go. So a bit of sugar lavender, really useful if you're doing cakes with, you know, I don't know, summery, meadowy, flowery kind of theme. These are really, really easy to make and add in to enhance your cake. There we go. And I say they're really easy. And I'll give you a few sugar flour tips as we go as well. First things first, what we need to do when we're making sugar flowers is we need to make sure we've got the right paste, and you need a florist paste. I always use Squire's, this stuff, sugar florist paste. Renshaw's do a modelling flour paste, but if you just use the covering sugar paste that you get in the supermarkets, that's not florist paste, and it won't do the same job. It'll just crumble and go. So you need a florist paste to do this. I didn't realize when I first started making sugar flowers many years ago, I didn't realize this. So I was trying to make flowers using just normal sugar paste, had no idea. So florist paste is what you need. Squires, I swear by Squires. There are loads of different ones. Smart Flex do one, and a lot of the big names in sugar flour. Suzanne Esper does one, and Natalie Porter's Immaculate Confections does one, and various other people brought their own out, but I always use Squires. So that's the florist paste. I have coloured mine a lavender colour, funnily enough. It might sort of look a bit grey where you are, but that's my sugar paste. So I took white and I actually coloured it using Colour Mill, what's that one? Purple and Royal. So a tiny bit of each. Don't go too mad, because if you put too much of this into florist paste, it just goes. Because we only want a base colour, because when we finish it, we're going to dust, and it's the dust that lifts it up. So that's our florist paste and our colour. The other thing that we need, as you can see here, is the wire. Now, wires come in different thicknesses. This wire here is a 24 gauge, and when you buy a wire, it will usually tell you, there we go, on there. This one's a culprit one. There's Hamilton ones, there's all sorts. But the 24 is sort of quite right for this, because it holds it up, but then it gives it a little bit of yeah. Now, the smaller the number with wire, the thicker it is. So I've got some 20 here. So I've got some 20. So a 20 is quite a solid wire. Let me show you. Oh! So that is a 20 compared to that. You probably can't see it on there, but it's quite a bit thicker, the 20. So if you're choosing wires for your sugar flowers, just bear in mind that there are different thicknesses. Okay. The other thing we're going to do to the wire is we're going to cover it with tape. So this is white wire covered in green tape. So here's the tape. Here's the wire. And the reason that I'm covering it with tape and not just getting green wire is because the tape actually helps the sugar paste bits to cling on. So I take my long wire there, you can see there, long piece of wire. I'm actually going to cut it in half for this because I want my lavender to be quite long. So there we go. So that's in half. Okay. And then to cover it with the tape, you need a bit of tape. I always use the thinner tape because when you wind it round the wire, it lies flatter. You can get thicker stuff. This is all ripped anyway. But it tends to be a bit bulky when you wind it round. So I always tend to use the thinner one. And you can get all sorts of different colours of this. I think this one is Nile green, but there's moss, there's olive, there's different shades, and there's browns and there's whites. And I think you can even get it in sort of blues and pinks if you want to go completely wild. Now, the key to tape, again, I wish someone had told me this when I first started doing this, is that to release the glue, you need to stretch it. So when you pull it, that releases the glue. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're just going to attach it to the top and twiddle it at an angle so that it works its way down the wire. Okay, I don't know if you can see that there like that. Yeah. And then just take it off at the end. So that's our wire. Now, we do need cutters. The perfect cutter for lavender is this one. It's a PME plunger, and it's part of a set. You get 4 in the set. They're the PME Daisy. I think they're called Daisy Margarita cutters. They're plungers, and we want the smallest one. But obviously these ones are really useful for other bits and bobs that you might use. So we're going to be using this one. Okay. And the other things that we need are some glue. This is actually homemade glue. I use Tylo powder for my glue, but you can just use edible glue. You can actually get away with water, but I prefer to use glue because it holds a bit better. And then I've just got a brush for my glue. Rolling pin. If you haven't got a rolling pin, you can get away with, well, you could get away with a normal rolling pin, but they're a bit bulky, and particularly if they're wooden, you're going to find that the paste sticks. You're best off with something like I don't know, I haven't got one. Just a paintbrush, and roll it with a paintbrush if you haven't got one of these. But these are quite cheap. If you're going to make a few, it's worth getting one of these. Right, I'm going to bring you down so that you can see what I'm doing here. You don't need a board, but mine is filthy and it's full of scratches and I need a new one. But anyway, the board just helps when you're rolling your paste. Now, it's really important with your paste to make sure it's nice and warm and squishy. Okay, you'll find when you get it out the packet, whichever type you're getting, you'll be able to just pull it apart and it comes off in wedges. You can't really make flowers when it's like that. What you've got to do is warm it up, and you warm it up like this by kneading. If you're going to put the colours on, if you're going to colour this, you put a dab of whichever colours you're putting on, and then twist it and knead it till the colour's even, and that will warm it up. What you're aiming for is for the paste to stretch like that. Once it's sort of like that, you know you're good to go. And it will stick to your fingers a little bit, but that's the way it is. I was trying to do some sugar flowers when it was really, really hot last week, and it's a nightmare because the paste just goes sort of like we did. We all went, and the paste does too. Another really important thing to remember with the Florist Paste is it dries really, really quickly, which is really great for your flowers because they dry really quickly. But if you leave that out, it will get a hard crust on it, and it will go, it will sort of become fairly useless after a while. So it's really important that whenever you're not using your paste, in fact, I'm probably only going to use half of that. that you put it airtight. So I always squish mine into bags. Make sure there's no air in there. Okay, and twist it. This green I used last week, and even then it's gone really hard even in the bag. You can freeze it. So if you make up some colours and you know you're not going to use it for a couple of weeks, might be best just to freeze it, and then it won't go hard. Well, it will go hard because it's frozen, but it will defrost. You know what I mean, don't you? Okay. So what we're going to do, obviously, is roll it out. Now there's you can have a go at just rolling it on the board or wherever you're rolling. Try not to roll it into wherever you're rolling. Lift it off after every roll, and then you'll find that it'll be easier to manage. See, I've got a cornflour puff here. Sometimes when it gets too sticky, I'll put a very light layer of cornflour on there. But I don't need it tonight because it seems to be okay, this. And yeah, so lift it up after each one, because if you roll and roll and roll and roll, you'll find you're going to be picking it off. You want it sort of like this. Now for lavender, we don't want it too thin, because we want it to be able to sort of stand up. Yeah. So this is probably about the thickness that we're after. Okay. And then all we're going to do, we're going to cut out quite a few of these, because what we're going to do is sort of layer them up. So we're going to push them on the wire and layer them up. So we just need a handful of them. So because you've allowed the paste to move around the board, it's really easy to cut in. Run your finger over the bottom to get rid of any fluffy edges. And then there we go. So do it fairly swiftly, because this will dry out if you're not careful. If you wanted to do loads at once, you can get I've got my, where is it? It's gone. Oh, there it is. My plastic bag that I've cut in half, and I'll put petals in there to stop them drying out. But I won't bother with this. I think I'll just leave them on there and just get a move on, and they will be all right. Ooh. So it doesn't really matter which way up there, actually. So I want to, there we go. How many shall I do? Let's do 10. When you're making your sugar flowers, don't think you have to duplicate another flower or an example exactly, because as we know in nature, generally things aren't complete duplicates of each other, and different flowers will have slightly different quirks about them, different sizes, different ways that the petals are arranged. And that's what I love about doing sugar flowers, is that you can sort of be a bit creative and bring your own sort of vision to each flower, really. You can make it into your own individual. I think we'll leave it there. See, this stuff now I'm going to squish up so it doesn't dry up, and I'm going to put it in there quickly because I don't need what's on here to dry up. So what I'm going to do now, I might actually turn all those over. I don't think it really matters, but it's just one of those things I like to do, because then when I push them on, the other side will be on the outside, if that makes sense. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to glue them all at once. And this is you have to be quite quick with this, because if you glue something and sort of leave it for half an hour, there's no chance. You're not going to be able to do anything with it. So only glue everything if you're about to use them all and actually glue them. Oh, he's escaped. Come back. We've made my board gluey now. Well, there we are. I think that's all of them. Okie dokie. So this is the fun bit. This is quite fiddly, and you do need fairly dry hands for this. So this is where I have my cornflower pouch ready, and I'll just put my fingers on it just to keep my fingers dry. Because if you get glue all over your fingers, you've got no chance. Right, this is the fun bit. So we have, we have our wire here. And what we're going to do is we're going to, on the end there, and push it up. Okay, I'm going to push it up the wire and then pinch it at the top. So it's slightly fiddly. So Lavender are fairly simple, but they're a little bit fiddly. So that is the top one. Yeah. Then all we're going to do is just add them on. So this one's probably going to go about there, and just sort of squish it with your fingers. Ooh. Yeah, can you see that? And as you can see, oops, we are building up our lavender here. Now this is a fairly pale colour. As I said before, it was the two colours that I mixed in. You can buy Florist Paste that is already coloured. I tend to buy the white. If I'm just doing a pale colour, I tend to just buy the white and then colour it. Otherwise, I use a little bit of the colour paste and then never, you know, don't use it for anything else. But so if it's a pale flower I'm doing, so recently I've just done loads of blush pink roses. Loads and loads of brides have asked for blush pink roses. So I will use white and just put a dab of pink in to turn it blush, which is fairly straightforward. So yes, so this is fairly fiddly, but you can see how it's growing. So I'm going down there. But there are different types of lavender, you know, different colours, as with all flowers, aren't there? You can get really deep purple lavender, can't you? And all sort of shades in between. So obviously, if you're doing it for a cake or a display, you want to choose a colour that's going to look good with everything else you're putting on the cake. Ooh. Yeah. It does get a bit gooey because all the glue that you put on is sort of spreading up the stem as you push it up. So there we go. Sometimes lavender is sort of spread out with gaps in the middle. Sometimes it's more sort of bushy like that. But I like to put one that's sort of down the stem a bit. Are you going to stick? Come on, just squish him on there. There we are. So it's down the stem a bit. Yeah. So that is how we do lavender. So fairly easy, but quite fiddly. Okay, you've got to have fairly dry hands. You mustn't put too much glue on. These are where people go. In fact, where I went wrong when I started doing it, put far too much glue on, so it just ends up a gluey mess. As with all things glue, less is more. As some of you know, I was a primary teacher for 30 years, and children with glue can be quite hilarious, because the logic is that if it's sticky, you need more to make it more sticky. But, you know, that's not the case, is it? You just need a hint of the glue. So, yeah, so watch how you use your glue. And there we go. Oh, hang on, there's a, did I miss anything? No, I always wear it on there. It's a long story, Suzanne. It's a long story, but it's always on there. But thank you for asking. That's very sweet. So there we go. So what we're now going to do is I'm going to let that dry, because I'm going to dust one that I did earlier that's dry. Okay. I don't like to dust when things are still a bit tacky and soggy, because they can just, well, you can imagine, can't you? I've lost the little thing I stuck it in. There it is. There we go. So that's going to get stuck in there to dry. And what we're going to do now is we are going to dust. Now, when we're dusting, let's pull this down a bit. There we are. Paper towel, brush. Now, I'm using a big brush for this one. Usually, I'm quite precious with brushes, and I use tiny, teeny ones like this, because I'm trying to be really subtle and detailed and things. But with this, I just want to sort of dust all over, really. So I'm going to be really unsubtle with a brush this size. And I've got two colours actually here. I've got the Rainbow Dust Lavender, which is quite pale actually. It's not very lavendery. So I mixed it with a bit of Bishop Purple, Fractal Bishop Purple, which will sort of purplize it a little bit. And it makes that, which I think is nearer to the lavender that we know and love. I don't know if you can see the difference between the dusted here and the non-dusted here, but it does make a bit of a difference. As I say, usually I would be really precious with dusting and say, be really careful and less is more. But with this, with the lavender, you can sort of go a little bit mad. Just be very careful that you're obviously not going to break it. Don't go fluff on. So with the dust, you put it on the paper towel, get it into the brush, and then dust. There we go. So you can be a little bit more bravado with this. Ooh. And the little one there. There we go. And it just gives it a bit of depth, a little bit of oomph. Just a little bit of, there we are. And that's all we need to do. And one of the joys of doing it in a paper towel is that you can fold it up and throw it away, and you haven't got dust everywhere. There we go. Oh, so there we go. That is our lavender. Yeah. Hello. That is our lavender. So it's really, really quick and simple, but just fiddly. As I said, it's just fiddly. Once you've got the hang of pulling them onto the wire and squishing them with your fingers, which can be a bit of hit and miss. First time I ever tried this, I got in a right old muddle and I had to throw some bits away. But persevere. you will win. So there we go. So that is Sugar Lavender. For those of you that don't know about the Sugar Bloom box, it's a subscription box that I run. You can either get past boxes. So if you look on the website, the sugarbloombox.co.uk, you can see that there's past boxes. So you can actually buy a box to make. There's all sorts of ones. Freesia, poppies, carnations, roses, peonies, all sorts. So you can get a box with the materials in. So you get the sugar paste, you get the cutter, you get the dusts, you get the wire, all the bits. Plus you get the link to a little video of me showing you how to make it. And subscribers, if you subscribe every month, you get the box every month, but I don't tell you in advance what the flower is. So when you open up the box, you find out what it is you're making that month. We've just last week before, when was it? Last Sunday, I think. We did the July box, which was an open peony, which I haven't got here. I should have brought one along. I do that because that's what it looks like. Next month, I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's a surprise. It's one of those, ooh, what's in the box things. But all the details are on the Sugar Bloom box. Have I got? There it is. Oh, no. Oh. There it is. The sugarbloombox.co.uk for all your sugar flower needs. There we go. So there we are. That is our Wednesday live this evening. I hope you've enjoyed it. I do love making flowers. I'm definitely in my happy place when I'm making sugar flowers. I could spend all day just sat here and making them. Yeah, happy bunny. So next week, what am I talking about next week? Hang on, let's have a look because I've got my doodah here. Oh, pricing. I'm going to do a bit of do some things about pricing next week because I know some people find that quite tricky. So I'll give you a few hints and tips on pricing. And the week after, I'm going to talk about imposter syndrome, which I know has been talked about a little bit in the group over the last week or so. So I'll do a little bit on that as well. So there we are. So I hope you've enjoyed it. This little training will be in the guides in the group. And it'll also be put up on my YouTube channel as well for you to watch at your leisure. So have a good week, have a good weekend, have a good week, whatever it is you're baking. And I hope to see you all next week. All right, toodaloo.